Hello. Hold on a second. I'm just waiting for a couple of people to show up, which I'm sure they will eventually, because I wanted to talk to you and share a couple of ideas with you, see if they inspire or interest you. And I want to talk about art and artists and how we survive and make a living. Okay, great. Welcome back, Erica and Ode. It's nice to see you all. So I wanted to. I'm sorry about the technical snaffleupagus that just happened. So I wanted to talk about art and artists and how art is a job. Because I think a lot of us, when we're little, we love drawing and painting and making art, but there invariably comes a point where somebody says, "You better cut that out because really, how are you planning to make a living?" And so, we we give up, we move on, we try something else. And it's unfortunate. You think about how much art didn't get made, how many interesting and beautiful things didn't enter the world simply because somebody couldn't figure out how to pay the rent. And so they went off and became something else, did some other job. And, I think that it's a thing that we should talk about some more, and we should perhaps recalibrate our thinking, because I think times have changed. Certainly times have changed from when I was, in seventh grade or ninth grade or whenever it was that I was dissuaded from pursuing what I now do for a living as a living back then, because it really just wasn't kind of feasible to do that, because you couldn't like go and apply for a job at the art corporation and go to the human resources office and have an interview and provide your resume and then get benefits and a pension and all that kind of stuff. It's just not how art works. We have to function differently. So I wanted to share an essay with you. And, one of the things about when I write essays, which I do every week, and then I come and read them to you here, and I read them to you on Mondays. And generally, I give you, if you are a subscriber, you get this earlier. You get it, well, on Friday. In this case, I'm actually going to read you an essay that you would have gotten over a year ago. So this is taking quite a while to get to YouTube. But if you become a subscriber, you get them early. And let's see if you think it's worth it. Let me read you this essay that I was talking about. And their essay is called How to Finally Make a Living as an Artist. We live in a golden age for creatives, except for the gold part. For a generation, creative people have managed to find niche audiences for their specific interests thanks to the internet. You can find audiences who like ukulele music or whittling documentaries or essays on keeping a sketchbook, none of which would have been identifiable and reachable in the 20th century or ever before that. You can find an audience, you can get attention for your ideas, but can you get paid? The catch has been figuring out how to make enough to support yourself while continuing to make your art. Now, artists are used to being hustlers, and we're creative, so we have the ideas and the tools to address this challenge, this need to hustle. And we've developed lots of different types of income streams: online courses, merchandise, online stores, commercial gigs, working for the man in some capacity as an illustrator or maker of some kind, sponsorships, advertising alongside of our content, being here on YouTube. And all of these have made us self-promotion machines. Now, most of our time is spent managing our social media presences. I can't tell you how many friends I have who are illustrators working on Instagram, and they spend all their time working on their Instagram accounts or making YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. And these side hustles generate some revenue, but a lot of times they're compromises of the artist's true, authentic vision and desires. And they're also time sucks that take us away from making our true art. And even if people love our work, here's the question: will they prise open their wallets to support it? The fact is, we don't pay artists if we don't have to. We all love to gorge on free content. We watch YouTube videos, we read blogs, we browse Instagram, none of which directly put food on the table or art supplies in the studio. We get books from the library, or we go to the secondhand bookstore rather than buying new ones which pay authors royalties. We subscribe to streaming services, and maybe the musicians get a tiny bit of money. And the thing is, even if we do give money to the arts, not much of it ends up with the artists. We'll pay $20 to go to a museum exhibition, or $25 to a publisher for a book, or $100 for a Broadway show, or $150 a year to Netflix or Spotify or Hulu or HBO or Apple TV, blah, blah, blah. But the individual artist has to share that money with middlemen, like big corporations, big tech corporations. And they end up taking most of it. Did you know that only about 2% of artists on Spotify earn more than $1,000 a year? That only 2% of the books sold last year sold more than 5,000 copies. And an author gets less than $2 for each $15 book that's sold. So you do the math. That's not a lot of money. Publishers, galleries, studios, record companies, they're all middlemen with huge overheads who are driven by profit, who decide what's going to see the light of day based on if it's going to sell or not, and who still leave the artists to do most of the promotion and marketing. But fortunately, artists have new emerging ways to make more money and to fully own their creations themselves. New technologies let us reap the rewards for making authentic work and not just commercial compromises. And all these new tools also protect artists from piracy, which is a really big deal. Think about how easy it is to just copy a book or an image or some music. But now new tools protect artists from piracy. And they allow our fans to pay us directly, so we're supported by the people who love us rather than middlemen and corporate boards and shareholders and who knows who. So here's some of the platforms and the tools that we now have that didn't exist 15, 20 years ago. Things like crowdsourcing platforms like Kickstarter. And they let us just kind of sketch out a project and to see, is it of interest to the audience before we invest all that it takes to bring it to the world. Do you want it? If not, I'm not going to kill myself making it. And I certainly don't want to see it sitting on the shelf or in stacks in my garage. If you'll invest in it with me and we'll work together to bring it to life, awesome. Subscription newsletters like Danny's Essays, or blogs, or channels that allow writers to create content that's available only to those willing to pay, or some are free, but some are for paid subscribers. Kind of like the way books and magazines function. Remember magazines? Yeah. When was the last time you paid for a magazine? But without the need to pay the publishers 92%. That's what a publisher gets when you write a book. They get 92% of the money. I'm not sure if they do 92% of the work, but I use things like ConvertKit and Kajabi, which are platforms that allow me to send out newsletters or to sell courses. And they help to support my family, but they also provide a living wage for dozens of artists who work with Sketchbook Skool. We want to make sure that's the first thing that we decided to do when we started Sketchbook Skool, was to figure out ways to help artists make some money so they could make more art and not worry about it, not have to make the compromises. And it isn't just buying and selling. There's also platforms like Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee. There's even, I think, some tipping function on YouTube. And it lets people to support artists that they like so that they can keep making cool stuff. It's not like just putting down a hat. It's really more of a collaboration of artists being able to say to people, if you support me and like me and you want me to keep doing this, then let's collaborate and you support me now while I'm doing it, rather than just buying stuff from a gallery after I've done it. Then there's things like NFTs, which is kind of incomprehensible to most of us, but they allow people to create digital creations that are unique and can't be reproduced. And that lets people pay artists directly, and to make sure that this is a thing that happens a lot. A gallery sells a piece of an artist's work. The artists make a bit of money then, but then later on, that rich person who bought that painting sells it to another rich person. Guess what? The artist doesn't get any of that money. And as it continues on that market, the artist is cut out of it. But with NFTs, they can track it and they can continue to make money whenever the art is resold, which is really important. And they also let people invest in an artist's long-term growth to support the artist over time. Now, NFTs are kind of dubious in some ways because there's been a lot of crap that's been made into NFTs, but the actual technology is still there and is really valid. And I'm sure in time is going to become an important part of protecting artists, writers, musicians, lots of other things. There's a lot of interesting things that are going on. Artificial intelligence is another thing that we're obviously hearing huge amounts about. But I thought there was an interesting thing that Grimes, who is a musician and a producer, and unfortunately the ex-girlfriend of Elon Musk, but that's neither here nor there. But she put out a thing where she said, if you take my voice and you turn it into an use artificial intelligence to make basically a clone of my voice, and you write music with it, that's okay, as long as you share half of the proceeds with me. And I can imagine that becoming a thing that'll happen more and more, where artists, instead of getting ripped off, become collaborators with their fans who write music using their voices, their music, and their tracks. So I think that's interesting, still in development. But the fact is, artists will always make art. Even if we have to struggle, we'll do it. We always have. But imagine a world where we can support ourselves and we can support our families while still making art, not having to get a day job, not having to do all kinds of things to compromise. And how much more and better art there would be, right? How much more respected art and artists would be as business people. And imagine a world where artist and starving are never uttered in the same breath. The future is really bright, but it's up to us as creators to explore and to understand and to support all the different ways there are of making it. Don't give up. Figure out how to use these tools to find people who love what you do and make a living out of doing it. Remember, it's up to all of us who believe that a world full of art is worth preserving artists however we can. Sure, there's a mountain of free content that you can binge on 24/7. Awesome. But remember where it comes from and give back. It matters. It's up to all of us to support artists as well as enjoying art. Feels like a bit of an editorial this time. I hope you don't mind that. But this is something that I think about a lot, I think about it as somebody who tries to make a living from the stuff that I make. I used to not make a living from the stuff that I make. I used to make compromises with my creativity to make a living, but now I really try and make a living. But I'm always surprised when people say, why are you telling me about this stuff? Why are you advertising? Why are you always, and I had a conversation with a woman just yesterday, and she said, oh, you guys on YouTube, it always ends up coming down to you wanting money for something. I was like, well, don't you want money for something that you do? Isn't that a pretty normal thing to do? Why do you assume that everything should be free? It's not overly expensive, but seriously, wouldn't you like to support the people who are doing it? And I think as artists, we're also embarrassed and ashamed to ask for support, right? Like, what are you doing? Don't, leave that to the money guys. Well, I'm tired of leaving stuff to the money guys because they take most of the money. It's up to us to stand up for ourselves and to say, you know what? Let's collaborate. You give me the means, give me the paint, and I'll paint it. So, do you agree with me? I'd love to hear from you. And if you subscribe to my essays, and these are free, they're not making me any money. But if you subscribe to my essays, you can also reply to them and just send the email back to me and tell me what you thought. I'd love to hear from you. All right. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope that this made you think a little bit. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. Have a great day.